With SOC 2, scoping is key. One of the things that makes SOC 2 different is the ability for you to define what systems are considered in scope. The audit evaluates controls as they apply to those systems that you define. If you forget to list one, the result is that it simply won't be on the report. For example, you as an MSP might decide that systems that touch client data are in scope, and they really all should be, and everything else is out of scope. For those of you who read reports that you get from service providers, have you ever gotten one like this? Our site is hosted at Amazon, which has all of the compliance alphabet soup you could ever need. Well, that's great. What about your software development practices? What about your logging and monitoring? What about the way your application is used? I've seen this over and over again, and every time it comes up, there's a couple things you can do. You can make a compliance exception for them. You can outright reject the vendor, or you can just ask for more information, assuming it's available. So how do you do this the right way? Let's take a look at a diagram. Let's say that you're a typical MSP, right? And this isn't necessarily going to be every MSP, but this is a good representation of services that most service providers will have. So for example, you might have your RMM system in AWS. You might be hosting your PSA in Azure, and you might have backup data in either your own data center or more likely a colo or even as a service. And then you might be reselling SaaS email like Microsoft 365 or G Suite to your customers. And you might have services that are internal only that are SaaS. ESAT is a great example. Your customers don't really interact with that. I know sometimes they might if your ESAT and CSAT are mixed. Then think about the customer side of this. So if you are the customer, you have your endpoints, your workstations, laptops, your various data types, files here, email that doesn't go through you, right? Because you're just reselling email, but you are doing email through a service provided by the MSP. And backup here is another service that your MSP is providing. And from the customer's perspective, what they really know is this kind of dividing line. And think about this from the perspective of someone doing an audit on you or involving you in their own compliance requirements. They receive an invoice from you for all these services, for RMM, for PSA, for backup, for email. And what they're asking by asking you to produce a SOC report is saying, is everything that you're selling me on this invoice, is that up to snuff? Can I take your report and have it covered all the services I get through you? Things that don't come into scope or they don't care about are things like this, right? Your ESAT system, because you're not reselling it and it doesn't have any customer data in it, and it doesn't come into scope for SOC 2. But anything that the customer has that they send over this figurative wall, that they send over that dividing line, the customer wants to know, is this safe? Is this secure? And I know there's a point about, you're not reselling 365 or you're not reselling G Suite. This doesn't necessarily need to be in scope. But what I would suggest is when you're doing your evaluations of things that you're looking to resell, make the product being able to demonstrate regulatory compliance just be part of your evaluation. And then you can confidently say to your customer that, hey, everything that you get through me that's through on this invoice, everything that you're sending over this wall, that's covered in our SOC 2 report. And remember, you can scope SOC 2 however you want. You can decide that I'm only going to do my PSA environment, or I'm only going to do my RMM environment, or maybe RMM and PSA for you are hosted, so I'm not going to worry about those and only talk about the portion of the service that is on my own infrastructure, my backup data, for example. I think it's just so much easier to be able to say anything that we resell as part of us reselling it needs to be something that's covered by compliance. And it's just so much easier to not get into the semantic discussion about well, this is and this isn't, and you're technically buying it through us, but your compliance obligation is with Microsoft. Even if that's technically true, think about how powerful it is to be able just to sit in that meeting and be able to confidently say to the person who's asking, if it's on your invoice, it's covered. And that's what I would recommend. And if you can't do that for some reason, if reselling something that is critical to your business simply doesn't have a SOC report available, call that out. Make sure that that's documented during the initial discussion with the customer.